Good evening and welcome to episode 6 of the Rugby Nats chat show. Mike and I are going to be discussing a couple of things tonight. The first thing being as a result of the cruise trip to Morpeth at the weekend, rugby in the Northeast. And then we're going to talk about injuries and the new rules, particularly affecting the Premiership. And is there any effect lower down? But Mike, do you want to open up with your thoughts on rugby in the Northeast?
Yes, I mean, I think some of the feedback we got from the team that went up there was that perhaps there is, there's an optimism about the game in the Northeast, and I think that the Northeast has actually always punched above its weight. You've had strong rugby schools up there, RGS, Durham, Barnard, Castle. I know it's gone into a little decline in the state schools, but I think that has happened throughout the country, not specifically in that area. You have Northumbria University, Durham University that play at the top level of university rugby.
Durham in particular.
And you have the under-20s competition for the non-professional players, where over the last 5 years, the only southern side to appear in the final at Twickenham, oddly enough, has been Berkshire, the smallest of the constituent bodies, who won the tournament and then were runners up. But it's been basically run between
Who was
Yorkshire.
coaching them then?
I haven't got a clue.
No, I can't imagine.
I haven't got a clue. But Yorkshire and Northumbria have dominated that. So it seems, in that respect, the game's in good health. They've produced some fabulous players over the years. I mean, going back in the day, of people like Mike Whetstone, Malcolm Young, Roger Utley, and coming up to Jeff Parling, there have been some great players from the Northeast. They've also been influential in coaching in England, with Dom Rutherford, who was also in England and British Lion player, becoming director of coaching with the RFU. He was assisted by David Shaw, and Alan Black was on board, and it was known as the Northeast Mafia. But they did a very, very good job in driving the game. I think that there is probably a little bit of resentment in the North in that they do at times feel neglected. But I think also the Northeast is probably not helped by the number of clubs that actually play. Well, it's good that they play the game up there, but they've all taken a turn in being the top club. When I was small, I can remember sides like Durham City being dominant, Percy Park, Northern, Hartlepool Rovers, and when you came into the Cup era, you had Morpeth, where the Nats team went at the weekend. Now, I remember sitting in a London Irish changing room when the draw for the Cup was announced, and we were drawn away to Morpeth. And then, one of the lads said, well, where's that? We've never heard of that. But we soon found out, because when we went up there, they gave us a bit of a hiding, 19-3, and incidentally went on to play in the semi-final of the Cup. And after them, you had followed Gosforth. They dominated the Cup. And then when the game went professional, the West Hartlepool was certainly one of the outstanding sides in the old Division 1, which would now be the Premiership, but they went into decline. Now Newcastle have come about by it was Gosforth, Newcastle, and now it's just Newcastle. They're doing well in the Premiership. Lower down, we've got Darlington, who are in the National 1. Now they're quite an extraordinary story, that they've got a stadium that can accommodate 26,000 people. It's the third largest rugby union stadium after Twickenham and Welford Road in the country. They were, up until the weekend, in second place in the in National 1. They lost at the weekend, but their ambition is to get into the Championship and be a Championship side. They certainly have the facilities. Their coach, Danny Brown, fervently believes that they can do that, they can achieve that aim. And in the level below, in National 2 North, you've got Tynedale setting the pace at the moment, with the possibility of them going up. And lower down in the league, well, I think they're second from bottom, Blaydon, but those clubs are within close proximity. So I think there's been this sort of merry-go-round. And if you go down to Morpeth's league, I think Morpeth are in third place at present in Northeast 1,
Good
which is level 6.
Good win this weekend as well.
They did, yeah. And you've got Penrith who are top, then you've got Alnwick, and you've got a whole list of these clubs. I think there are 6 from the Northeast in that particular. Sorry, from Northumbria and Durham in that particular league, and the rest are Yorkshire clubs. So I think the game is, it is. There's plenty of energy up there. It's always had these small clubs, and I think we have to accept that. I don't think it's necessarily the game has gone in decline up there. Probably RFU could think about taking games up there, well, anywhere in the North England games. But I think the game, they've always, as I've said, punched above their weight. And I think we have to accept that. They do a great deal of good for the game, and they've certainly developed the game in that area over the years.
From a grassroots level, is there still competition for new players between Union and League?
Well, that's a strange area there, because they've never really
embraced
League.
No.
Yeah. I think they did have a go at one time, I seem to remember, with a side called Newcastle. But it is really a union community,
Yeah.
but it's a small community, and it's quite isolated, or parts of it are isolated, and you're looking at population as well. And I think they do well to run all these clubs. Can be argued it's a pity some of them don't join together, Blade and Tyndale, but that's, I don't think that will ever happen.
No, the history's too strong.
No, I think there are parochial interests there.
One of the other things that we were going to talk about today was actually in the paper quite a lot last week, and I watched quite a lot of rugby at the weekend on telly, and it was talked about on telly, was the concept that these new rule changes, particularly the speed of the game, is adding to collisions and fewer breakdowns, therefore the ball's in play longer, and teams are feeling it. The physio room is busy. I think Jamie Roberts was quoted as saying there was 20 or 25 Harlequins players unavailable. Do you think the rules have really made that much difference?
Well, they're trial laws at the moment, as I understand it. That they are going to be reviewed. The publicity seems to be really centred around Wasps and Harlequins, who have had quite large injury lists. There's no doubt about that. The A-League, which has actually had a number of games postponed because
players are having to step up.
Yeah, and they just haven't got the playing resources. But my own view on the A-League was I just wondered about that anyway. I think that Nigel Melville's idea, which was spot on, that if you're not in that first team squad and you want your players to get experience, they are better playing for a club in the Championship, National 1, National 2, where they will play in pressurised conditions.
Decent level.
Yeah, in the A-League you play your game. Let's be honest, if you're not challenging in the top 4 as the season progresses, there's very little interest in it, and fixtures go by the by anyway. But I think it centres on this, that there have been these injuries. But I think Brian Moore wrote an excellent article in the Telegraph yesterday where he said, well, it's very early to say...
6 games.
Yeah, absolutely. And there isn't really any great stats available about what's happened in those games. There's nothing from the Championship, nothing from National 1 at this particular point in time.
Sort of... tucked in with what we talked about last week about this Professor Pollock talking about injuries and now talking about the Premiership. I was thinking about, when I knew this was coming onto the agenda for tonight, I was thinking about that and how's that reflecting in the game lower down? And I've spoken to several people about this during the week, and I'm not entirely convinced that actually we are seeing that. The rule changes around the breakdown, hardly seeing at level 6 or 7, hardly seeing any change. People are still committing quite heavily to it. And as for the ball being in play longer, I think that is probably going to be almost a sort of a Premiership, Championship, perhaps National 1 anomaly, because the skill sets are higher. They can keep the ball phase after phase after phase, whereas when you come down to the sort of levels that I'm used to seeing, we're quite capable of cocking it up ourselves. We don't
kicking it off the park.
Kicking it off the park. Yeah, we don't. We in fits and starts we can keep it in play for a repeated amount of phases, but it's quite common, 3 or 4 or 5 phases for your knock-ons or your overrunning or whatever to happen, and it's a lot more stop-start anyway. So my initial opinions is I think that is an exclusive problem further up the game.
Yeah, I think you could be right. I think that watching some of the Premiership matches on television, there's no doubt that there are some pretty dangerous collisions.
Oh,
and also some pretty dangerous tackles. Now,
and some pretty iffy refereeing decisions.
Well, I think there's no consistency in that, and I think they have to have that consistency. You need a strong hand there, but also coaches at that level should, I believe, insist on correct technique. Now, trying to make a tackle where you just launch yourself head first, no arms and shoulders into somebody, that's just dangerous. Now, either the player is doing that deliberately, which I think they are, in which case those players shouldn't be picked. I think the coaches have a duty to the game to select. I'm not suggesting only goodies can be selected, but I think players who persist in dangerous play, I don't think you can have anything to do with them. And I've certainly seen incidences of that. But certainly lower down, as you say, there's disparity in each league. We've covered that before in terms of strength and power and fitness, conditioning levels and skill levels. We certainly haven't seen a great deal of it at our level at all.
Well, I've got two of the physios at the club. We were talking about this on Sunday at the ladies' game, and we keep quite comprehensive records of injuries. And last year was a year from hell. We had a massive amount of injuries, but we're pretty much on an even keel. And long may that continue. But certainly these rule changes aren't doing. Do you know the only one we're struggling with, and we're only 4 games in, unlike the Premiership, but the one we keep on struggling with, and opposition teams, is kicking the blooming ball in the ruck, kicking it forwards.
Yes.
It seems to have become sort of so inbred with the forwards that it's sort of second nature. And it's the instinct stuff that's difficult to stop.
Yes, I can see that, and I think that it's it's getting that mindset, that change, and that takes a few games. But going back to the Premiership again, without evidence, without specific stats, it's very difficult to say. I mean, the stats so far over the last few seasons with the collisions in the...
Everything's on the up anyway.
Yeah, the Premiership was going up anyway. Tackles have increased in the Premiership, but in the top 14 and the Pro 14, that's been relatively static. I think we have to wait and see. I certainly haven't seen a great deal of it lower down at National 2 level. And there's been some good rugby played, and the ball has been in play, I'd say, a little longer, although I don't really have any evidences yet of that. It's got to be over. Those judgments, I believe, have to be made over a period of time.
Yeah, absolutely. Have you had an opportunity to look at the results this week?
I have indeed, yeah. Going back to our friends from the Northeast, then Darlington, unfortunately they went down to Old Albanians and down to St Albans, and they lost, so they move into third place now. Plymouth go into second, having beaten Cambridge 17-10, so it was quite a close
tough
for
game,
them.
yeah.
But hey, Coventry, who have been dominating.
That was a tough game.
Last kick of the game, win against Bishop Stortford. Now, Bishop Stortford, having played against them last side with great character, as I've said, they're well coached, and so they've done very, very well there. But after 6 games, I will make a prediction. I do believe that Coventry will be promoted.
Sorry, Coventry, that's it. You're losing next week.
That's the kiss of the kiss of death. Tewkesbury's guaranteed kiss of death. In the 2 North, well, Stourbridge retained their position at the top. They scored a lot of tries against Blaydon, 48-11. They remain top. But Tyndale went over to Sheffield Tigers and had a good win there, 29-10. So they're in second place. At the moment, it's between those two, but I think it's too close. There are a few sides lurking below, and I think it'll be a long old season there. Now, National League.
Too sad.
Well, Cinderford and Chinner, both unbeaten, although Chinner had drawn a game. Not any longer. Cinderford went down by 20 points to 31. Chinner scored 4 tries. And surprised me. I mean, I would have tipped Tewkesbury's kiss of death. Actually, Cinderford probably just to sneak it on what I'd seen. But Chinner, very resilient. A good win for them. No doubt about that at all.
It's a tough place to go and play rugby, Chinner.
It was at Cinderford.
Sorry.
That's even tougher. I think. Yeah. I mean, fair play. Chinner did, I think, well to win there. But Taunton, they always have this reputation of starting off very well, and then as the season progresses, the foot seems to come off the pedal, and they're not as convincing. But they were certainly convincing on Saturday with 13 tries against Worthing. You know, 81-14. Another
Good
big score.
grief.
Another big score. Now Worthing.
They're no pussies anyway.
No, I
were
mean
they?
they were unbeaten until the Rams took their unbeaten record away from. So yeah, I mean that's very, very impressive indeed. So it's at the moment, you know, it's Taunton, Chinner, and Cinderford at the top. Who knows? Let's watch this space. In the regional Premiership leagues, nothing in the Midlands. They had a cup weekend. In the South, well, Barnes defeated Sidcup, who had been going particularly well. Barnes got 4 tries.
You mentioned them before as well.
Yeah.
Sorry, Barnes. Sorry, Sidcup.
Yeah. So, Barnes were relegated. Are a good side. We saw that last year. Very unlucky to go down. Guernsey moving to second place by virtue of hammering Southend 60 odd points. In the north, well, you got Lymm at the top with Preston Grasshoppers, but they just managed to sneak it at the weekend with 1 point, and they're at the top of that league. In the southwest, Dings Crusaders. Again, unbeaten, not as convincing as previously. They only won at Bournemouth by a point. Newton Abbott retains second place by virtue of beating Exmouth in what appears to be a very exciting game by 48 points to 42. Fantastic result.
Staying with Dings Crusaders, I was shown a photograph on the internet today of their new ground. Have you seen it?
No.
Oh my God! I believe they've sold their old one to a housing developer.
Yeah.
And they've got this new ground. It's an aerial photograph. The clubhouse is almost as big as the pitch, and the pitch looks like it's been sort of cut with nail scissors or something.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Well,
I think it's a new home this season, I think.
Right. They had moved there a few weeks ago. Presumably they're moving shortly. I thought.
Well, from the photograph I saw,
they're in there already.
It looks like it's ready to go to me.
Yeah. So, another weekend of National League rugby come up. So get out, watch the games, and enjoy a Saturday afternoon. And thank you very much for watching.
Cheers.